Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining us. Before we start today's presentation, just a disclaimer, please refrain from recording any audio or video or taking screenshots during today's webinar. This presentation and the corresponding slides are copyrighted by Robson Forensic and may not be recorded, copied, distributed, or otherwise used without authorization. Today's presentation from Dr. Kenyon Conklin is on the role of a veterinarian in dog bite cases. If you have any questions, you can submit them via the Q&A button at the bottom of your Zoom screen, or you can email them to us at inquiries@robsonforensic.com. We'll get to those at the end. For now, I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Conklin.
Okay, thanks so much, Anne. So first off, thank you all so much for attending. We know how valuable your time is, especially around the holidays, and really appreciate you being here. So as Anne said, my name is Dr. Kenyon Conklin, and I'm one of the veterinary experts here at Robson Forensic. So I have over 20 years of practice experience in some pretty diverse settings. I started off my career doing private emergency and companion animal practice. I have also worked in corporate, large multi-doctor, multi-hospital centers where I've served as the chief of staff. We'll discuss my military service in a little bit, and I've also been engaged in Department of Defense research. I obtained my veterinary degree from the University of Pennsylvania School of Veterinary Medicine, and I am a retired United States Army Veterinary Medical Corps officer. One of my major responsibilities within that role was the medical, surgical, and behavioral care of multi-purpose canines. And those are the dogs that can do both explosives detection and patrol, or what is commonly known as bite work. I also served as a public health representative where we would have to discuss behavioral policies for on-post animals and how we handle strays that are found on post as well. My forensic casework, a lot of it is comprised of dog bites currently. At last check, about 30% of my caseload is dealing with dog bites. It's divided pretty evenly, 50-50, between plaintiff and defense representation. I also focus on veterinary malpractice and veterinary standards of care. These standard of care investigations also extend to places like training facilities, boarding facilities, and also looking at animal shelters as well. I do many cases dealing with animal abuse and neglect, assessments of animal behavior, and biosecurity, meaning the transfer of disease in research facilities, farms, veterinary clinics, and other facilities. We are also very, very lucky to have another veterinarian on staff here at Robson Forensic. My colleague, Dr. McGee Leonard, is an absolute asset here at the firm. She is a board-certified criticalist and specializes in emergency and critical care medicine. So she has extensive experience with severe trauma and multi-system illnesses that land animals in intensive care units. She also is highly experienced with dealing with behavioral assessments and dog bite cases as well. So I'd like to discuss a little bit about why do we care about dog bites and why are they comprising so much of what we see every day. So I think that these statistics give a powerful picture of what we're seeing, and also the understanding that dog bites are representing a huge expense in the United States. Not just financially, but also physically and emotionally to all parties that are involved. So we're just going to say that about 17,000 dog-related injury claims are reported nationwide annually. That's the latest number from last year. And typically over 300,000 ER visits with an average cost of stay over $18,000 happen each year. So these types of injuries are costing our insurance companies about $900 million to $1 billion per year. So certainly a large financial impact. Then also we have to look at the victims. Many of these victims are unfortunately young children. Also, injury sites are going to vary by the age of the victims. So young children, typically those under 10 years of age, are very overrepresented in dog bites that are going to go to the face and to the head. So they can be very impactful in a young person's life from a cosmetic standpoint, a medical standpoint, long-standing, and also severe psychological concerns moving forward. Also, interestingly, 50% of dogs that go on to bite people per peer-reviewed literature have a history of biting other animals. So this becomes pertinent information when we are doing our investigations. So what makes someone a dog bite expert? So pretty much anybody can call themselves a dog trainer. Animal behaviorist certifications and university programs certainly exist. We also see dog bite experts who have functioned as working dog handlers. I think what's important to realize when you're looking at dog bite expertise is there can be a wide variety with these categories of trainers, handlers, and behaviorists in their experience, credentialing, and their educational levels. Whereas when we look at a veterinarian, when someone calls himself a veterinarian, you know exactly the training that they went through. You know that we went through 4 years of undergrad. We were accepted to another 4 years of veterinary school and had to complete that successfully. We receive education in many fields of medicine, to include everything from behavior, radiology, dermatology, surgery, medicine. If you can think of it within human fields, there are veterinarians who are getting that education as well. From there, we also have to seek national board passing rates, and then we have to seek state licensure from there. We may or may not, depending on our future goals, if we choose to limit our practice to only a certain segment of practice areas, we'll go on and do internships and residencies. And all veterinarians, depending on where they are licensed, are going to have to attend some pretty rigorous continuing education to keep their license in good stead. So with that in mind, why is a veterinarian different from other dog bite experts? Veterinarians are the only qualified individual to assess the behavior as well as the health and the training as facets of the incident. We are also the only qualified individual that can prescribe behavioral modification medications to dogs and assess the efficacy and appropriateness of that course of medication. We can assess records from veterinary clinics, behaviorists, and also trainers to pick up on nuanced verbiage. For example, as a lawyer, you're going to look at some of the memos and other documents written by other lawyers, and you're going to pick up on some subtleties between the lines. That's the same thing with a veterinarian. We're going to see little things like a dog being described as mouthy, or that the veterinarian or veterinary technician that saw them highly recommended behavioral counseling and training. So these are little tip-offs that let us know that we need to dig a little bit further when we're doing our investigation and really assess what this dog's behavioral tendencies were. As part of our work, and usually this is in conjunction with law enforcement and other legal experts, as far as folks who are working within animal shelters who have to help craft public health policy and address dog law in the area, we are very experienced with the applications of municipal and state dog laws as part of our job. And we are also the best qualified to determine animal abuse and neglect. We are highly experienced with doing what's called a necropsy, where we examine, just like a human autopsy, a deceased animal to look for definitive cause of death or injury in these animals. So as I alluded to before, we also look at health as a consideration in our bite case investigations. We will sometimes see defense assertions of pain or ill health as a defense for a dog's behavior. And we are very well able to assess concerns such as arthritis, previous injuries, endocrine problems like thyroid disease, poor vision, or general debilitation as a contributing factor in a dog bite, and also previous dog abuse as a factor. So one case example that I've seen recently was that Lyme disease was being used as a defense for a dog's aggressive behavior. When I was able to investigate the records appropriately, I was able to determine for the client that effectively the wrong test was used to make this allegation, and that when the gold standard test had been utilized within this dog's record, I could tell that it did not have active Lyme disease at the time of the incident. So what does a veterinarian do in just their day-to-day practice that makes them uniquely capable of making behavioral assessments? We kind of look at behavior from two different directions. First, we look at it from the quick assessments that we have to make of patient behavior up to 40 times a day. Every time a patient comes into an exam room, we have to assess very quickly what the potential behavioral outcomes of this interaction is going to be. We have to do this to keep the patient safe, ourselves and our staff safe, and also our clients safe within that exam room. And we get the luxury of being able to make these assessments and observations with patients and their owners in relaxed settings within the exam room, and also stressful settings. How does that dog act when it's being put in an unusual position? It gives us some very interesting background in these cases. On the other hand, we are also used to doing in-depth one-on-one behavioral assessments and treatments when we are dealing with behavioral problems such as canine aggression. So training considerations and evaluating those. So veterinarians are utilized as the experts in our field to assess the humane application of training aids. There are many training methods, from what you select from collars, how you perform corrections, and veterinarians are capable of assessing those training methods and their outcomes, both for behavioral and general physical health of the animals, as well as assessing the records of training for companion, service, and working dogs. So I just wanted to go over two quick case studies for you to just show basically the bones of a case and how our investigation can help steer how you're going to handle a dog bite case and the kind of guidance that we can help to give you in these. So the first one is a case that our client was actually representing the defendant in this matter. And the case involved an adult dog that was asleep on a couch. A visitor to the home hugged the dog while it was on the couch sleeping and startled the dog. The visitor ended up with a laceration to the eyebrow that required several procedures to ensure appropriate healing. My investigation was able to definitively show that the owner had no notice of aggressive or other behavioral concerns or tendencies with this animal, and that the dog had a long record of successful training in stressful and non-stressful situations, and the dog was always well behaved with no sign of any aggression. And the last thing that I was able to determine as part of my investigation, based on my background in canine dentistry, is that the laceration was not consistent with a purposeful bite and was much more in line with a dog that inadvertently was startled, pulled its head up, and inadvertently caught the eyebrow of the dog as it was trying to kick its head back and see what was happening. The second case, this would be a plaintiff case that our client was representing and taking care of. The plaintiff is the case involving, there were two adult dogs that were living in a suburban neighborhood. A Good Samaritan who was out for a walk and lived in the neighborhood notices these dogs, thinks they look familiar, and remembers the house that they've seen them at before. He calls the dogs. He doesn't touch them, doesn't put a leash on them. and they willingly follow this Good Samaritan back to the house. Approximately a block away, one of the dog attacks the Good Samaritan from behind with no notice, causing extensive bites to the Good Samaritan's arm and leg. Our investigation was able to determine that the owner had extensive notice of not only previous escapes from these dogs, but also previous aggressive behavior with no consistent efforts to remediate the problem. The defense expert alleged that the dogs acted this way because of territorial aggression, and essentially stated that the Good Samaritan should have known better than to be walking the dogs near the owner's house. I was able to show that that was irrelevant to the case and also without scientific merit. So I hope that gives a good introduction to you on the differences that different dog bite experts can provide to you as far as services, how the veterinarian is different in our training, expertise, and background, and the different nuances that we can provide in our investigations that will assist you in these matters. We should have time for, it looks like we might have one question that Anne can bring up for me if I can't get it here. Okay. I'll let you drive.
So the question is, how can the health of the dog, i.e. more aggressive, act as a defense in a strict liability state?
Sure, and that's a really tough one with a strict liability case. Absolutely. It's in a defense situation, it would be challenging. Absolutely. So I would have to know a lot more details about a specific case to really be able to give you guidance with that. But you're right, dealing with some of the strict liability states can be very challenging with these cases.
Yeah, and I would say if you want to delve into that a little bit more, shoot us an email at that inquiries@robsonforensic.com address, and we can kind of run a conflict check and talk about that a little bit more in depth.
Absolutely.
And then we have another question. If the dog was euthanized within 48 hours at the direction of the owner, how would that affect the expert analysis? So I guess within 48 hours of the bite incident.
Sure. And it's a great question. And same as Anne said, if we have some specifics on this, I'd be happy to discuss that further, as long as we make sure there are no conflicts. It really depends a lot on the additional case materials that are available to me, and how reliable are they, and just the general facts of the case. But yes, I have had to work on cases where the attacking dog has already been euthanized, and have been able to assist very successfully in those based off the case materials that were available to us. Frequently, there is not a need to actually examine the animal or to do a site inspection with these cases, so it is still quite possible.
That makes sense. Okay, we have another one. Does the lack of any formal training for a dog, regardless of breed, lend itself to more or less of aggressive behavior leading to biting individuals?
Sure, there is some peer-reviewed research stating that animals that do not have formalized training, depending on the breed, they are also statistically less likely to have appropriate controls placed on them. When we consider appropriate controls, we're talking about also appropriate supervision, appropriate containment, like fencing or similar. So yes, there is evidence that states that those two, again, depending on the facts of the situation, but yes, there's a correlation there.
All right, well, that looks like all the questions we have submitted. Again, if you have anything, shoot us an email. Oh, wait. Okay, interesting. Under what criteria would a vet recommend euthanization?
I'm assuming that we are talking about in the case of a bite.
Yeah, assuming we're talking about a bite.
Yes. So, and that is, it's such a tough topic, because as I talked about with bite cases in general, that is part of the cost of these cases, is also the emotional bond that goes into this, and being in the position where your animal has done harm to a child or another dog is extraordinarily difficult. So a few things that I discuss when I am in practice and I am talking to one of my clients who has been in this position is I have a very serious conversation with them about what are they willing, able, and prepared to do to prevent additional bites, and how certain are they that those controls will not fail, because we're human, we make mistakes, dogs make mistakes. How well equipped are you to ensure that these mistakes are not going to happen again? And what are your actions going to have to be if they would? What, that's the worst case. What happens if this happens again and happens worse? Because there is peer-reviewed literature stating that these escalate from, from animal to animal contact, animal to person, and they can increase in severity. So those are the things that I discuss. And I also discuss with my clients the pet's quality of health too, because animals who are in this cycle of aggression, there are many different reasons for it. And some of it can be anxiety and fear driven. And that's a sign of an animal that's not happy. Are we going to be able to fix and mediate that? So yes, I'm going to discuss with them every option that they have and help them to make a good fact-based decision that is best for their pet and their family. But if it's a case that we are concerned about safety moving forward, I would much rather have a patient that is humanely euthanized than something bad befalling that animal as well. And I let them know that. So I'm there not to force them into a decision, but I am there to help give them facts and make the best possible decision that they can.
Very well said. Our last question is not a question at all, but it is one that I agree with. 10 out of 10 presentation. Great job.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Conklin, for your insight. This has been absolutely fascinating. I hope everybody enjoyed. And again, reach out to us if you would like to discuss a potential case.
Perfect. Thank you so much, everybody.